call.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, on the 7th of January to 15th, as co-convener of the Australian Parliamentary Friends of Palestine, I led a fact-finding mission to Kuwait, Jordan, Palestine and Israel. This was a cross-party delegation comprising Labor, Liberal, National and Green members of Parliament. Our primary goals were to enhance parliamentary relations with Kuwait and Jordan and to seek a greater understanding of the Palestine-Israel conflict and to see first-hand the impact that the occupation of the West Bank has on the daily lives of its people. Over an 8-day period, we met with key government and non-government officials, academics and business stakeholders, as well as hearing from local Palestinians and Israelis during our visits to Kuwait, Amman, Jericho, Ramallah, Hebron, Bethlehem and Jerusalem. Mr Speaker, our journey began in Kuwait, where we held meetings with the Speaker of the Kuwaiti Parliament, members of the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Kuwait Chamber of Commerce. In Amman, we met with members of the Australia-Jordan Parliamentary Friendship Group. We had a very frank and candid meeting with the Jordanian Foreign Minister, Mr Ayman Safadi, who impressed upon us the need to come and work together towards a comprehensive, just and peaceful solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Minister made it abundantly clear that ongoing tensions and the absence of a germane peace process were being stoked and manipulated by extremists, and that unless resolved, this conflict will continue to inspire and feed the terrorist narrative. Crossing the King Hussein Allenby Bridge, our first meeting was with the Governor of Jericho, who briefed us about the impact that Israeli settlements are having on Palestinian farmers, in particular critical access to water, land, roads, infrastructure and other utilities which are having a detrimental effect on local economic development. Water security was also raised during our meetings with NGOs MAN and Al-Haq and the Palestinian Hydrology Group in Ramallah. It was made clear that water restrictions in Gaza and the West Bank were not only a fundamental violation of human rights, they're a key environmental issue in the occupation of Palestinian lands by Israel. We met with the Governor of Hebron, Mr Jabrin al-Bakri, and during our walk through the historic town centre, the starkness of the situation is both confronting and palpable. It's a network of security checkpoints, heavily armed Israeli Defence Force patrols and a crisscross of securitised urban infrastructure. There are about 800 settlers in Hebron, and at any one time 400 soldiers are deployed to protect them. What we saw in Hebron is very much an example of the broader network of segregation that exists in the West Bank. Hundreds of kilometres of the towering wall separating Ramallah from Jerusalem and the hundreds of checkpoints that the Israeli Defence Force used to separate, control and restrict the movement of the Palestinian people. Our visit to the Ada refugee camp in Bethlehem reinforced the miserable consequences of this continuing regime. Its debilitating impact on both Israelis and Palestinians is profound. We met with the Israeli NGOs Breaking the Silence and the human rights group B'Tselem. They pressed strongly that Israel's future security could only be secured by living in peace with their Palestinian neighbours. These courageous Israelis speak out because they love their country and are proud to be Israelis. Their plea to Australia, as a close friend of Israel, is for us to urge Israel's political leadership to negotiate in good faith with the Palestinians in order to progress a two-state solution. They realise that time is running out for a viable Palestinian state, and the alternative, they say, will have far-reaching consequences for peace, democracy and security in Israel. Deputy Speaker, this was also the message conveyed to us during our meetings with Palestinian officials, Dr Hanan Ashrawi, Dr Mustafa Baghuti, Deputy Prime Minister Dr Nabil Abi-Rudina and others who expressed their despair at the Trump administration's decision to withdraw funding from UNRWA and to also close the PLO office in Washington. They saw this as signs of an increasingly one-sided approach to the much-anticipated peace deal that might be eventually offered. It was conveyed to us repeatedly that the US decision to move their embassy to Jerusalem had intensified tensions and contributed to the disillusionment and exasperation of a new generation of young Palestinians who believe Oslo is finished and that the only option is resistance. Similarly, the Australian government's badly managed announcement regarding moving our embassy to West Jerusalem in the future was seen as unhelpful and one that broke with our long-held commitment to progressing a two-state solution. Deputy Speaker, our delegation was at all times encouraged to work with the Australian Parliament and Government to assist in finding a peaceful way forward. I'd like to thank our ambassadors in Kuwait, Mr Jonathan Gilbert, our ambassador in Jordan, Mr Miles Armitage, and the Australian Representative Office in Ramallah for their excellent support and assistance with their delegation. And finally, I'd like to thank His Excellency Izzat Abdul Hadi, the Ambassador of the State of Palestine here in Australia. And Deputy Speaker, if I may, I'd like to table the delegation's report.
Is leave granted?